and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment of Cowboy State Politics Live. From very high above all the puerile and vacuous forms of Wyoming mainstream media, this is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly and permanently ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Thursday. And I have to tell you, my friends, every time I get into this studio, I just get so excited to do the program. I mean, it's sitting in behind the silver microphone is a lot like being in a cockpit. Now, I've never sat in a cockpit before, but I imagine that's what it's like. All these bells and whistles and different levers and buttons. And I mean, there is so much at our disposal here at Cowboy State Politics headquarters. And I have been a busy guy lately. Now, of course, yesterday I was not on the program because I was doing an interview with Harmeet Dillon. And I have to tell you, my friends, that thing is fantastic. Sometimes you do an interview and, you know, afterwards you think, well, maybe I should have said this or I should have said that, or, you know, maybe I could have handled this one a little bit differently. But that interview with Harmeet absolutely knocked it out of the park. It's incredible. You're going to love it. And I'm probably going to publish that sometime next week. I've got to go through the audio on it, and I've got to have some time to promo it. So I'm thinking next Wednesday we'll publish the interview with Harmeet Dillon. I'll also play it on the Independence Network so everybody gets a chance to hear it. But as far as the podcast goes, that'll be next Wednesday. We'll do Harmeet Dillon. Also coming up, I have a number of interviews already set up with different candidates running for office. One cool thing I'm kind of excited about, and tomorrow I'm doing an interview with former Representative Lars Lone. Now, he's involved in politics, and he probably always will be, but he's gone out on a different type of adventure. Now, he's selling hydroponic vegetables. Now, I mean, he lives in Wyoming, so don't think it's that kind of hydroponics. That all happens across the Wyoming southern border. But he's going to come on the show, and we're going to talk about getting prepared. Lars comes from a family where it's very important for them to prepare. They store a lot of their food, do a lot of canning. So we're going to talk to Lars about how important it is to get prepared. And it should be a good interview. It'll be a little bit different than we're used to on Cowboy State Politics, but should be pretty interesting. And then I've already got interviews set up with a number of different people. So we're going to do the same thing election-wise as we did last year, interview as many people as humanly possible, and so that you can hear from all of these people who are running for various offices in the state of Wyoming. Now, if you have forgotten, today's program is also being simulcast to the Cowboy State Politics website. If you want to, you can see what's happening in the studio. You can see my charming face and watch what's going on. You know, you don't realize the facial expressions that you have when you're talking on the radio because, you know, usually there's not a camera there. But since I have installed a camera in the studio, You can watch everything that's happening from the website. And all you do is click on that little link that says live at the top of the Cowboy State Politics website, and it'll take you right to it. And you just click play, and you can see what's happening in the studio. Also, if you miss the program during its broadcast time, you can always go back to the Cowboy State Politics website, and you can just play the video. And so it's pretty cool. I'm pretty excited about it. I didn't think that I would like having a camera inside the studio, but I'm getting a little bit used to it. So don't worry about it. On today's program, apparently we're going to have a debate. Now, fortunately, this is something that I happen to know a little bit about, debates, that is. And, Biden came out in a 23-second video, and the video itself is fantastic because in 23 seconds, they have jump cuts 5 times. 5 cuts in 20 seconds. The guy couldn't even do a solid 20 seconds worth of taunting of former President Trump without having to take a break. So that tells you exactly how this debate is going to turn out. But the former president said, absolutely, you name when and where, and I'll be there. Now, of course, President Trump has been challenging Joe Biden for a long time about having a debate. And so apparently now we're going to have one. Cool, huh? So there's an article in Fox News. And I should tell you that after President Biden issued his challenge to the former president, he said, well, there's a lot of conditions we're going to have. I'll only debate if we meet these conditions. So first, he comes out with all the bravado that he can muster, which, by the way, in his dilapidated state is not that much. But then he says, well, if we have conditions. Now, there's an article on foxnews.com right now that says that here are all the restrictions that Biden's team demanded in their Trump debate offer. And, I love it when people say, I'll do this under a bunch of conditions. That's what we saw with drag show Clark Stith on Cowboy State Politics. I asked him to come on and explain his donations to Drag for a Cause, which is the outfit in Rock Springs that sets up all these drag shows and invites little children that I've got video of. It's really actually kind of disgusting. So we were going to have Clark Stith on, and he agreed to it. And then he said, well, I have some conditions. You can only use this for the interview. And like I'm really going to let drag show Clark Stith tell me what I can use from my program and where I can use it. Yeah. So I sent him a kind of a pretty snarky email and said, well, of course you're going to say that, Mr. Lawyer trying to sneak your way out of everything. And then I made his emails public. So, he never came on because of those conditions. So President Biden is doing the same thing that drag show Clark did. Let's go to the article. And I quote, Trump 2024 National Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt joined America's Newsroom to talk about President Joe Biden's debate challenge. President Biden and former President Trump on Wednesday made their plans to officially debate, but the offer from the Biden team came with several strings attached. And I'll be honest with you, my friends, I don't know that all of these strings necessarily hurt President Trump, which is why I wanted to go through this article and talk about it, just so you're clear and we don't go off half-cocked. So Trump gave Biden an open invitation to debate anytime, anywhere, and Biden rose to the challenge, telling Trump to, quote, make my day in a heavily edited video on social media. Alongside Biden's announcement came a letter from his campaign to the Commission on Presidential Debates, and that letter revealed a few critical limits that the Biden's team was placing on any debate between him and President Trump. Here's a couple of them. They don't want an audience. Now, I'm kind of halfway on this one. I don't know that it necessarily hurts President Trump because this thing is going to be broadcast everywhere. Several networks have already agreed to simulcast the debate. Now, even if it's on another network, they'll run the footage. But Biden's campaign heavily criticized the Commission for Presidential Debates for making them huge spectacles, and this is a quotation from their letter, huge spectacles with large audiences. In its letter to the organization, the new debates between Trump and Biden must take place in a television studio with just the candidates and the moderator president. Quote, the debate should be conducted for the benefit of American voters watching on television and at home. not as entertainment or for an in-person audience with raucous or disruptive partisans and donors who consume valuable debate time with noisy spectacles of approval or jeering. As was the case with the original televised debates in the 1960s, a television studio with just the candidates and moderators is a better, more cost-efficient way to proceed, focused solely on the interests of the voters. I don't really see this as a problem because it's going to be broadcast everywhere. Every network's going to pick it up. So I don't see this as that big of a deal. It might be kind of a disadvantage for former President Trump simply because he kind of feeds off the audience. But I really don't think that this is going to be that big of a problem. I mean, President Trump has his wits about him and his opponent doesn't. So shouldn't be that big of a deal. The next condition is that there will be no third-party candidates present for the debate. So no RFK Jr. or anybody else. Jill Stein or whatever her name is, the usual Green Party candidate. Biden's campaign says the debate must be mano a mano with no third-party candidates allowed. This is a critical demand because it excludes RFK Jr., a long-shot independent candidate who has nevertheless made his presence known in the polls. Not only that, but Kennedy has been shown to be more effective at leeching Democrat voters than Republican ones, making him an outsized threat for Biden. The third condition is that it's going to have limited news outlets. Biden's demands limit the number of major news outlets that can host a 2024 presidential debate. Quote, it should be hosted by any broadcast organization that hosted a Republican primary debate in 2016 in which Donald Trump participated, and a Democrat Party primary debate in 2020 in which President Biden participated. So neither campaign can assert that the sponsoring organization is obviously unacceptable if both candidates have previously debated on their airwaves. This rule sets the limit of networks that can host the debate to CNN, ABC, CBS, or Telemundo. So no Fox News. That is kind of a disadvantage for former President Trump, although I'm sure Fox will carry the coverage anyway. And so just because they don't get to host it does not mean that they can't air it. So I don't really see this as that big a deal. Now, the next one is the one that's got everybody kind of hot and bothered, that they're kind of irritated that this is one of the conditions. But let me explain why this really isn't that big of a deal. So the candidates the candidate microphones must mute after the time expires. Biden's campaign blasted the Commission for Presidential Debates for allowing extensive crosstalk and interruptions during the 2020 debates between Trump and Biden. They now demand that both candidates' microphones be muted once their allotted speaking time expires. Quote, there should be firm time limits for answers and alternate turns to speak so that the time is evenly divided and we have an exchange of views, not a spectacle of mutual interruption. I agree with that. I find that the crosstalk, the never-ending back and forth between the candidates to be highly distracting. I don't think that it serves either of them. So I totally agree with that. A candidate's microphone should only be active when it is his turn to speak to promote adherence to the rules and orderly proceedings. The letter to the Commission on the CPD criticized the organization for being unwilling or unable to enforce the rules in the 2020 debates. Quote, the result was far from, indeed entirely inconsistent with, the orderly and informative process the voters deserved in 2020 and should be able to expect in 2024, the letter continued. All right, so I don't see this as that big of a deal, and here's why. The president has a tendency to mutter and mumble, and his diminished mental capacity is well known. He says stuff like this.
True international under pressure.
And this.
Beer brewed here, it is used to make the brew beer in this refinery. Oh, Earth Rider, thanks for the Great Lakes. I wonder why it's called.
And some of these.
We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by God. You know the thing. True international under pressure. I got hairy legs that turn.
I'm not going to be a mule. I got something to do. I got to go do boom, boom, boom.
I just spoke at Dartmouth on healthcare,
at the medical school, or not, I guess I wasn't actually on the campus, but the people from the medical school were at the, I want to be clear. I'm not going nuts. I'm not sure whether it's a medical school or where.
Okay, all right, you get the point. But if the microphones are muted when it's not your turn to speak, that allows Joe Biden to go on and on and on like he always does. There's going to be lots of breaks in his thinking, ums and ers and tripping over words. And if his mic is muted, you know that Joe Biden is going to continue talking. Now, the same holds true for President Trump. He's going to have to be a little bit more disciplined when it comes to his speaking time. But think about it, right? If President Biden continues to talk and he's searching for words and can't figure out what he's going to say, and President Trump can't talk because the mic's turned off, it gives him more time to prepare. It gives him more time to come up with a response to whatever it is that Joe Biden is saying. So actually, I think that this is a benefit to both President Trump and President Biden, more so to President Trump. I don't see it as a problem unless there are other restrictions that are put on this debate by President Biden's team. I think these are entirely acceptable. Now, Trump has accepted Biden's debate offer despite the restrictions. However, with the first encounter scheduled for June 27th, it'll be hosted by CNN. Quote, I am ready and willing to debate Crooked Joe at the two proposed times in June and September, Trump posted. I would strongly recommend more than two debates, and for excitement purposes, a very large venue, although Biden is supposedly afraid of crowds. That's only because he doesn't get them. Just tell me when, and I'll be there. Let's get ready to rumble. So the stage is set, and now all we have to do is get everything ready to go and just wait and see what happens. So don't worry about the restrictions. I think it's actually a good thing for President Trump, and it should be a fun time to watch for all of us. More after the break.
I'm driving black on black. Just got my license back. I've got this feeling in my face. This train is coming off the track. I'll ask Malide if the devil needs a ride because the angel of my ride ain't hanging out with me tonight. I'm driving past your house while you were sneaking out. I got the car door opened up so you can jump in on the run. Your mom don't know that you were missing. She'd be pissed if she could see the parts of you that I've been kissing, screaming, oh, we're never gonna quit. Ain't nothing wrong with it. Just acting like we're animals. No matter where we go, 'cause everybody knows we're just a couple animals. So come on, baby, get in. Get in, just get in. Check out the trouble we're in.
You can listen to Cowboy State Politics live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. on the Independence Network. You're not going to find a better source of news, entertainment, and commentary than on Cowboy State Politics Live. You know, the program you're listening to right now. And frankly, why would you want to look anywhere else anyway? Let's be honest, only a liberal redcoat commie would do that. And if you want to listen to my podcast, you can find it at cowboystatepolitics.com or anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. If your name is Sleepy Joe Biden and you can't remember if you put socks on this morning or not, well, I can't really help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president of the United States. And now, back to the program. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson behind the silver Cowboy state politics microphone. Documented to be almost always right, just about 99% of the time. That's a record that nobody in the media can even approach, and they probably shouldn't even try. Not that they would, of course, because, all they print is a bunch of garbage. That's why they get called the cow pie over and over and over. They absolutely deserve it. Well, my friends, I have to tell you, last night I was jumping for joy. The Texas Rangers have finally stopped their losing skid. I think they lost 5 in a row. They got beat. Oh, man. They got beat by the Colorado Rockies, a game that I went to, and I was thinking, hey, man, if I'm there, they'll win. Yeah, that didn't work out. One of the times that I was wrong. Well, anyway, last night they beat the Cleveland Guardians. Here's your little moment of baseball zen.
Time again of guys that get overused early in the season and they run out of gas by the end.
2-0. And Garcia blasts one deep out to left. Florial's back. It is gone. Garcia's 10th home run of the year. He's homered in back-to-back nights.
They just always seem to come in bunches for Adolis. I mentioned in the open, he had 4 homers.
Yeah, so anyway, Texas Rangers win last night 4-0. Garcia blasted a two-run homer in the 6th, and that was the end of the scoring for the game. So thank the good Lord, they finally stopped their losing skid, and maybe they can they're playing the Angels next, and I think it's the first game is tonight of that series. Baseball is one of those funny games. Even though you can get on a losing streak, you can still recover. There's 160 games in the season, and every team goes through a losing skid from every now and again. And so the Rangers are not immune to that. They did it last year right before the playoffs and ended up having to play the wild card game. So anyway, they won last night. Let's hope they win tonight. And so anyway, moving on. So on this debate, the first one is scheduled with CNN. And wouldn't you know, the host that CNN shows, like this thing wasn't all set up from the very beginning. It absolutely was. But the host is going to be Russiagate hoaxer Jake Tapper. Lovely. You can guess that all of the questions are going to be slanted in Joe Biden's favor, and that CNN is probably going to attempt to talk into Joe Biden's ear, which ought to be interesting to watch. Since Joe Biden can't put together 2 sentences anyway without being prompted, it ought to be interesting to watch somebody talking in his ear, which, of course, that was what Donna Brazile got caught doing. I think it was during one of Joe Biden's first debates. She admitted to cheating in the debate. So anyway, CNN, Jake Tapper from Fox News. No, this is from the Post Millennial, and I quote, CNN hosts Jake Tapper and Dana Bash have been announced as moderators for the first presidential debate between incumbent Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump. The debate, which both candidates have agreed to participate in, is scheduled to take place on June 27th at CNN studios in Atlanta. The announcement marks the first time that Tapper or Bush will moderate a general election debate. CNN had previously selected Anderson Cooper to moderate the debate in 2016. CNN has also stated that no audience members will be present at the debate. This measure is intended to, quote, ensure candidates may maximize the time allotted in the debate, according to the network. CNN also showed that Tapper previously published the infamous Steele dossier. Excuse me, I just skipped a paragraph. Tapper previously pushed the infamous Steele dossier and Russiagate story, which accused Trump of having ties to Russia. Tapper was even rewarded with the Merriam-Smith Award for his coverage. He repeatedly pushed the debunked conspiracy theory that the former president was, quote, compromised by Russia and Vladimir Putin, but later admitted that he was wrong in the wake of the Durham report and that the findings exonerated the former president, quote, to a degree. That's what Jake Tapper said. I don't know. It's not going to be fair in any way, shape, or form. And President Trump knows this. I mean, he knows that the thing is going to be a setup. And so, as long as you know the conditions in which you're playing, you can deal with them. It's when you're throwing curveballs mid game that you have kind of a problem with it. But President Trump is well adept at handling the media, and if need be, he can go after them right there. So should be interesting to watch. Now, what was also interesting is the reaction from The View. Now, normally I wouldn't torture my audience by making them listen to The View, but in this case, I really can't resist. The co-hosts of ABC's The Views attempted to handicap the upcoming debates between incumbent President Joe Biden and his rival, President Donald Trump, and managed to miss the mark on almost all of their analysis. So the first one, Whoopi Goldberg, began with an explanation of the first of the demands Biden made, from friendly outlets and moderators to a mandatory mic cutoff once time had expired. She then claimed that moderators had allowed Trump to walk behind former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton during a debate. So let's listen to it, then we'll talk about it. So let's see here. The View, cut number 1.
Here's what I really appreciate. Biden is saying no audience.
Yep. Good.
And that the mics must be cut once
I love this.
the time to answer the question has expired.
Yes.
And I think it's fair, and I think it's in CNN.
It is CNN.
So it's CNN.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping, because the last time, and I don't know if it was CNN that was moderating it, but when the moderators allowed him to go behind Hillary Clinton and stalk her, and they didn't say,
stalk her.
Hey,
get back to the podium.
Get back to the podium.
Get back to the podium.
People always say,
okay, hold on a minute. So in that debate, there were no podiums because it was a town hall style debate. There were no podiums, and the candidates were allowed to walk around. So everything that Whoopi Goldberg is saying there is a load of bull crap, which is pretty much in line with everything that she says. But that was absolutely allowed. And let's just continue.
What was it? What was the crowning thing? Because I always
Crowning
said
thing.
he's gonna win. When he was running against Hillary, I always said it was never a doubt. I said, when I saw people recognize her getting stalked and didn't stop it.
Yeah. So recognizing that Trump was stalking Hillary Clinton. Well, the truth is the format allowed that. There were no podiums. There was no reason why he couldn't walk around. Hillary Clinton did her fair share of running around during that debate. So I don't see any problem with that. But that wasn't the end of The View's analysis of this whole thing. Co-host Alyssa Farah Griffin weighed in next, saying that it was, quote, smart of Biden to get ahead of this by challenging Trump to debate him. However, Biden's challenge came behind multiple calls from Trump for the pair to debate. Trump called on his likely opponent to debate him in early February, again after both he and Biden each swept their respective Super Tuesday races, and once more in late April. Sonny Hosteen went on to suggest that Biden had the edge when it came to the debate. So here's the next soundbite. Take a listen to this.
It was smart of Biden to get ahead of this by challenging Trump. And I think it's a recognition that they're neck and neck in the polls. And I think the Biden team is recognizing maybe the trial isn't breaking through in the way that having Donald Trump in every American living room, answering tough policy questions head to head with him will remind them who he is, what his second term will look like. I think it's critical that they do have these roadblocks in place. Cutting off the mics is the most important, or it can just descend into absolute chaos. And I'd remind folks, I've been for debates always. I understand he's ridiculously unfit for office, but this is for the Americans, whether we understand it or not.
Okay, hold on a minute. So that might be saying the quiet part out loud. And even though she's talking about President Trump when she says that he's ridiculously unfit for office, this is classic projection. And the fact that these people don't realize that Joe Biden is going to stumble and fall flat on his face is absolutely amazing. Unless, of course, they pump Biden full of methamphetamines and hop him up on all sorts of other drugs. I'm not suggesting they did that, but the State of the Union was kind of suspect. But I don't see where Biden is getting ahead of anything. If anything, he's just responding and realizes that he's hurting in the polls, that every single poll in swing states with the exception of one, I think, has Trump in the lead. So I don't really see this as any sort of edge. Yeah. So anyway, let's continue. Here's cut number 3. Check this out.
I think it's good for democracy. The only thing is, if you look at the statistics, a lot of people don't watch the debates, and a lot of people don't make their decision based on the debate. So that's a little bit disappointing. But I will say this. I mean, Biden clearly has the edge. Every answer starts with, well, my opponent who has been criminally convicted.
That's right.
Or, well, my opponent who is facing
Impeached.
who has been twice impeached. My opponent who is facing 3 other criminal trials. I mean, it's gold. It's very
but a lot of people out there feel like they identify with him, that they think he's a victim now. I was reading about this.
Yes.
And they identify
Well, that's what I wanted to say to Zahid yesterday. He's not, that's why I said he's not. Yeah, sorry. I am asleep. I'm trying to wake myself up.
Yeah, good luck with that, Whoopi. But yeah, so Biden could start every sentence with my indicted colleague over here. But that's not going to play well with American voters. The polls have consistently shown that every time there's something else that happens to President Trump, his poll numbers go up. Even if and I was saying early on, I wish they would indict him 20 or 30 more times, because every time that happens, his poll numbers go up. So that's not going to be an edge for Joe Biden. And for this program to try to handicap the debate is absolutely ridiculous. You're talking about a bunch of people that have no idea about American politics. And secondly, their assertion that nobody is going to watch the debate, I think, is really flawed. I think you're going to see a lot of people tune into this simply because they want to watch Joe Biden say stuff like this.
International under pressure.
Because he's going to. I mean, you can't stop it. There's no way that they can script a debate for Joe Biden. And even if they could, I mean, they could prep him all day long and it's still not going to matter, simply because he can't read it off a teleprompter. And if there is a teleprompter there, you know that President Trump is going to cry foul on it. Well, the last soundbite I have for you is saying that what Whoopi Goldberg is saying, he's just not going to show up anyway. He's a backer outer, is what she says.
But you're also right with this. But he's a backer outer anyway.
Kind of like how we testify in the trials.
He really doesn't. He's going to come across as the low information candidate that he is.
Yeah,
that is it. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
No,
not for nothing.
No,
President Biden has been in the Senate.
He's going to study. He's going to study, and then he's going to get pissed, and then he's going to go off the rails.
It's like, you have Bozo the Clown on one side, and you've got a statesman on the other who has had years under his belt of being.
I don't know who's Bozo the Clown, but I'm pretty sure it's not Donald Trump. And this whole debate is really high risk, high reward for President Biden. If he does well, it kind of disproves all of the claims that he's off of his rocker, which I don't see how that's even possible. Even when he's been prepped to the hilt, like for the State of the Union, that's a really good example. He went on and made a gaffe. I mean, I can't even remember what the numbers were, but it was at least one every couple of minutes. He couldn't even get Laken Riley's name right. Called her Lincoln Riley when he was holding up a button with the girl's name on it. So I think this is high risk, high reward for Biden, and it's for President Trump. It's really high reward, and I think it's pretty low risk because we all know what's going to happen with President Biden. So anyway, there you have the handicapping of the debate from the experts at The View. When we come back, we're going to talk about Disney again. Their slide into irrelevancy is continuing. But they've made an important change, and I think it's one that you'll agree with. So we'll do that after an absolutely outrageous profit timeout.
Money, we barely made enough to survive. But when we got up on stage and got ready to play, people came alive.
It's spring in the Cowboy State, or as Albert Sommers likes to say, spring-ish. Time to get the motorcycle out of the garage, time to go up the mountain, time to get outside and tromp around. And when you're doing that, you still want to make sure that you take care of your feet. The best way that you can do that is order a pair of Kenai boot socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. I know, your mama always told you that wool socks are only to be worn during the winter. But times have changed, my friends. The Kenai boot socks from the Buffalo Wool Company will not only keep your feet nice and toasty warm, they'll keep them cool and dry in the summer. Trust me, these are the most incredible socks that you're ever going to put on your feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. You're definitely not going to be disappointed. Wyoming is one of the most sought-after places to live. There's a lot of people that want to move to our great state. And if you're thinking about selling your house to one of them, you need a real estate agent that you can trust. That agent is Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She's lived in Jackson for almost 20 years and has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market. Last year, she sold almost $25 million worth of property. So if you're thinking of buying or selling, give Rebecca a call. Her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I get stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Watch out. Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. The Independence Network is only going to continue to get larger and larger. Cowboy State Politics, The Ramble Room, Just Blame Joey, Wide Right Turn, and many, many more. Welcome back to the program, my friends. We're burning through another busy broadcast hour here at Cowboy State Politics Studios. If you're just now joining us, I just finished talking about all of the things surrounding the presidential debate that apparently we're going to have. If you missed it, go back and listen to my analysis of all of the restrictions that were placed on the debate by Biden's team. I don't see him as that big of a deal. If Trump is on his game and you know that he's going to be prepared, there's no reason why those restrictions can't work for him. In fact, I think it might make for a better debate. And I hate to say this, but the Biden team might be right about this, unless they're going to cheat like Donna Brazile did in previous presidential debates. So anyway, if all's fair, which of course you're dealing with the Democrats, so don't ever assume that anything is fair, President Trump will do just fine. Well, now Disney has removed another, quote, problematic character from meet and greets. And no, it's not the park's cross-dressing evil queen. Though, if there were one character that ought to be a cross-dresser, it might be the evil queen. But Disney has driven its star fairy to the margins after finding her offensive. Disney, in recent weeks, has reportedly taken to having transvestites assume the roles of certain iconic female characters in its parks. Apparently, the company, growing increasingly synonymous with box office bombs, saw an opportunity to deprive actresses of at least one more female role at the Magic Kingdom. Tinkerbell. That's right. We can't have a magic fairy anymore. And if we do, it has to be a transvestite. But apparently they're removing her entirely. Whereas the company evidently sees no issue with the mustachioed men in dresses dealing with young children, it reportedly regards the fictional character of J.M. Barrie's 1904 play Peter Pan later made iconic in the 1953 Walt Disney film of the same name as, quote, problematic, branding her as such on account of her interest in the member of the opposite sex and likely her femininity as well. Disney has effectively clipped Tinkerbell's wings and thrown her into storage. At Park Place's Jonas Campbell told Fox News, quote, I suspect that Disney would work harder to keep the character in the parks if the Peter Pan and Wendy film that race-swapped Tinkerbell had been more successful, instead of being dumped onto Disney Plus and forgotten. Now, that attempt at updating the character does not resonate with audiences. And not long after we see a mainstay meet and greet character played by a young, athletic, white female performer disappear from Disney's biggest resort, added Campbell. In 2017, Bob Iger, who's the CEO of Disney, told investors, quote, we can take those values, which we deem important societally, and actually change people's behavior, get people to be more accepting of the multiple differences and cultures and races and all other facets of our lives and our people. In the years since, Disney has worked ardently to socially engineer the audience Iger feels it deserves. That campaign has involved transmogrifying Disney's intellectual properties and eliminating non-conforming content. These stereotypes were wrong then, and they're wrong now, says Bob Iger. The so-called experts behind the company's Stories Matter team have thought long and hard about what beloved characters are offensive to postmodern sensibilities. The New York Times reported in 2022 that the Stories Matter experts' thin skin broke when watching an episode of The Muppet Show from the 1970s. The offending episodes, like other Disney films such as Dumbo, were slapped with disclaimers indicating they contained negative depictions or mistreatment of people or cultures. These stereotypes were wrong then and they're wrong now, read the disclaimers. The professionally offended Stories Matter team also took issue with various iconic Disney characters, such as Ursula from The Little Mermaid, a supposedly queer-coded character with skin dark enough to prompt concerns about racism, reported the Times. Captain Hook from Peter Pan, a film taken off of children's Disney Plus profiles for breaching content advisories, was also deemed problematic, whereas some viewers might conclude from Disney's depiction of the villain that missing a hand might make amputees feel morally denigrated. But, you know, if we replace that character with a guy who's got two hands, well, that might make things better. Tinkerbell was among the characters slated for destruction because she is body conscious and desirous of Peter Pan's attention. More ridiculousness coming out of Disney in their attempt to absolutely ruin everything that we liked as a culture. I mean, it's absolutely amazing, my friends, that these people think that, you know, they can just erase parts of our culture and we'll go along with it. The truth is, these stereotypes exist. And part of the reason why we talk about them in popular culture is so that we can analyze them. We can watch videos from the 1970s and the 1980s and recognize those stereotypes. Simply erasing them doesn't erase the bigotry that might have been behind them. And I don't think that any Disney movie was bigoted at all. It further emphasizes the point that you can't make pictures like Blazing Saddles now anymore. There's no way that one would even be thought of being made. You couldn't have Mel Brooks anywhere near a studio, which, by the way, is interesting because a lot of his movies there are scenes in them that are, you know, they're funny, but I guess from the liberal, you know, postmodern, progressive viewpoint, they would be considered racist, even though the whole point was to expose the racism. Interestingly enough, it was not that long ago that they honored Mel Brooks for his Lifetime Achievement Award. So we can honor him in one instance, but on the back end, you know, we have to say that his movies are crap. It's superficial and it has no bearing on our culture whatsoever. Let's go ahead and take our last break and then we'll finish up the program. Welcome back to the program, my friends. To Cowboy State Politics Live on the Independence Network. You're not going to find a selection of better news, entertainment, and commentary than right here on the Independence Network, with great voices like Joey Carenti from Just Blame Joey, Ken Pendergraft from The Ramble Room, Tom Kelly from Wide Right Turn, and the lovely Christine from The Hair Affair. And of course, my program, Cowboy State Politics, Wyoming's most listened to political program. Also, don't forget to check out the article section at the website, independencenetwork.us. It's loaded with op-eds, commentary, and news from all around the Cowboy State. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program.
I remember I was 8 years old with a blank tape waiting by the radio. Come on, man, play Back in Black. I want to play it back on repeat. I remember Panama City, long nights with a girl named Christy. She took me down to the Paradise City, then up on Cripple Creek. Still something about a guitar cranked up, head banging to the beat of the bass drum. Still something about a sold out show in the second row with your girl on your shoulder. Still something about raising a cold beer when the lights go down and the crowd cheers. From Delta Soul to Abbey Road, sweet town to sweet home. Still something about rock and roll, rock and roll. Still something about rock and roll, rock and roll. I saw a Journey in the big Coliseum. No dancing, no lip syncing. I tell you this, don't fight the feeling.
Welcome back to the program, my friends. Cowboy State Politics Live on the Independence Network. And I, of course, am your illustrious host, permanently and definitely ensconced behind the Cowboy State Politics microphone, broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns. Now, if you're just now joining the program, we've been talking a lot about national stuff, but I want to take a few minutes and talk about some local Wyoming politics. The Wyoming caucus, that is the redcoats in the Wyoming legislature, are trying to denigrate any candidate or legislator that is not originally from Wyoming. Now, first of all, I don't think that just because you live here means that you have good ideas or that we should implement any of them. Let's not forget that Joe Barbudo, the chairman of the Democrats in Wyoming, is a multi-generational Wyomingite. And by the way, I don't think that matters at all. It doesn't tell me a thing about you, although a lot of candidates say it. You know, I've been in Wyoming for 100 generations. Well, that doesn't tell me anything about you, your positions, what you think on matters. The only thing it tells me is that the people that came before you had pretty good taste because they chose to live here in Wyoming. But it doesn't say a darn thing about you. Now, secondly, there are a lot of people that are moving to our great state that have watched their home states crumble under the weight of Marxism and socialism. And they don't want that to happen to Wyoming. And so, I mean, just to stick with this insular idea that no idea is good unless it comes from here is absolutely ridiculous. It's short-sighted. and it's going to allow us to fall victim to all the pitfalls that have happened in other liberal states. Secondly, a lot of the people that they're running, the Wyoming caucus, that is, are not originally from Wyoming either. Take my favorite whipping post, Poison Barry Crago. He wasn't born here. He was born in South Dakota. He's a rabbit choker. I know. Kind of a pejorative of people that live in South Dakota. But hey, man, if the shoe fits, wear it. He's not here. He's not originally from here. And he's the guy that wrote the op-ed complaining about all of these people moving in from different parts of the country. Secondly, the vast majority of people in the Wyoming caucus really don't have Wyoming's best interests at heart. And I could prove it by the numbers. They vote with the Democrats over 80% of the time. Look at Ken Clouston over in Gillette. That guy does whatever Speaker of the House, Albert Summers, tells him to. And I've got the audio of him saying that. So just because somebody moves here from out of state doesn't mean that they're that they're better, that they have better ideas. And these are the same people that are welcoming the likes of Bill Gates and Warren Buffett down in Kemmerer, building that nuclear plant. They're the people that are all in favor of those folks coming in from out of state. What about Mark Zuckerberg building that big thing down in Cheyenne? He's not from Wyoming, and yet here we are. We have public officials signing non-disclosure agreements with Facebook Meta. So that they can build that thing. I didn't know that public officials could sign non-disclosure agreements, and we're going to get to the bottom of that. So there's a lot of things that are being said about candidates in this race. And like I say, just because you're from here, just because you're born here, doesn't mean you're any smarter than a pile of rocks, and many of them aren't. And, the fascinating thing is if you sit down and watch the legislature, you will hear so many crazy things that a halfway intelligent person would not ever believe. And I've played soundbite after soundbite of these people. So just because you're from here doesn't mean that you have good ideas, and it definitely doesn't mean that we should follow them. Keep listening to Cowboy State Politics, because we're going to start bringing this up. In fact, I've got a story, and Joey and I talked about it on the morning show, of a couple of Democrats that have just recently registered as Republicans down in Cheyenne. Now they're running in the Republican Party, and we've got the proof of that. So we're going to bring that up on the program, probably on Saturday's edition. Also, as it relates to Saturday's edition of the podcast, I promised you that I was going to get to the bottom of this whole Reed Reisner endorsement thing, and I absolutely have gotten to the bottom of it. I've got the documents in my hand. I've got sound bites from him, and I'm going to play them. And it's, we hold people accountable on Cowboy State Politics, and that includes me. Reed Reisner's advertising on this program. Well, not on the live show, but on the podcast he is. And so we're going to hold me accountable too. And we're going to talk about how this guy is advertising on my show, and yet he is not exactly telling people the truth. And I've got the documents to back it up. So pay attention to the Cowboy State Politics podcast coming up. There's a lot of good programs, including that Harmeet Dillon interview that I did yesterday. I'm telling you, my friends, it's absolutely amazing. And we're going to do that next Wednesday. That's when that thing will air. So keep it tuned to Cowboy State Politics. Make sure that you don't miss a minute. And, we're just going to keep on. We're going to interview as many candidates as humanly possible, and get you the information that you need, and get you so that you can figure out who you're going to vote for, and you just don't listen to them. Know that you know, and do your own research, my friends. Now, we've only got about 6 minutes left in the program, but there's one story that I know that everybody's heard about, but I want to continue bringing it up. So Biden says that he can't take action on the border, that he doesn't have the authority, and he's been pounding Congress to say, give me the authority to fix the border and I'll do it. The reality being that he's had the authority all along. In fact, he was the one that reversed all of President Trump's border policies the first day that he was in office. So don't tell me that he doesn't have the power or the authority to fix whatever's happening with the border. But here's the irony. There's a new report out that says he's doing it anyway, even though he says he doesn't have the power, and he does, but he's doing it anyway. From the Daily Wire, and I quote, President Joe Biden is reportedly preparing an executive order to shut down the U.S. southern border if encounters cross the 4,000 a day benchmark. They're probably already there. The executive order, first reported by the New York Post, is similar to a provision in an immigration bill that failed to pass the Senate in February. That legislation would have put in place a trigger authority for the president to close the border if encounters averaged 4,000 a day. Closing the border would become mandatory at an average of 5,000 per day. Okay, the truth is that Joe Biden has that authority as commander-in-chief already to shut down the southern border. He's just not doing it. So the article continues. The White House has repeatedly faulted Congress for the ongoing immigration crisis and claimed that congressional action is necessary before the president can close the border. Republicans have challenged the White House's claim and said that the president has enough authority already to act on the border. Despite the White House's message, public opinion on Biden's handling of the border has sunk deep underwater as illegal immigrants have flooded the country. Immigration is the second most important issue to voters in swing states, according to the New York Times Siena poll that was released this week. The president's approval on the issue is just over 33%. However, and 29 points behind his roughly 63-point disapproval rating, according to a Real Clear Politics polling average. In 2019, Jay Johnson, who served as Homeland Security Secretary under Obama, said that the daily encounter average of 1,000 per day would overwhelm Border Patrol. At 4,000 per day, he said the border would be in crisis. Johnson said he would start every day looking at apprehension numbers from the day before. And I'd look at them every morning, and if it'd be the first thing I'd look at. And I probably got too close to the problem, and my staff will tell you that if it was under 1,000 apprehensions per day before, that was a relatively good number. And if it was above 1,000, it was a relatively bad number. The truth is, my friends, that the southern border is an absolute disaster, and the president is an absolute failure for not dealing with it. He has the authority right now to take care of it, and he's not doing that. And the polls reflect that, with only 33% approving of his handling of that. So we've got 3 minutes left in the program, and I got time for one more story. Anthony Blinken says that Ukraine will have elections once the war with Russia is over. Here's him saying it. Let's see here. Stinking Blinken.
Working with the government and civil society groups to shore up Ukraine's election infrastructure. That way, as soon as Ukrainians agree the conditions allow, all Ukrainians, including those displaced by Russia's aggression, can exercise their right to vote. People in Ukraine and around the world can have confidence that the voting process is free, fair, secure.
So once the war is over, then we can vote. Now, that's not how a republic handles elections. In fact, here's what President Abraham Lincoln said about voting during the Civil War. And I quote, "It has been a long and grave question whether any government not too strong for the liberties of its people can be strong enough to maintain its own existence in great emergencies. On this point, the present rebellion brought our republic to a severe test, and a presidential election occurring in regular course during the rebellion added not a little to the strain. If the loyal people united were put to the utmost of their strength by the rebellion, must they not fail when divided and partially paralyzed by a political war among themselves? But the election was a necessity. We cannot have a free government without elections, and if the rebellion could force us to forego or postpone a national election, it might fairly claim to have already conquered and ruined us. The strife of the election is but human nature, practically applied to the facts of the case. What has occurred in this case must ever recur in similar cases. Human nature will not change. In any future great national trial compared with the men of this, we shall have as weak and as strong, as silly and as wise, as bad and good. Let us therefore study the incidents of this as philosophy will learn wisdom from, and none of them as wrongs have revenged. But the election, along with its incidental and undesirable strife, has done good too. It has demonstrated that the people's government can sustain a national election in the midst of a great civil war. Until now, it has not been known to the world that this was a possibility. And it absolutely is a possibility in Ukraine. But the reason I bring this up is the people that are in charge of our country don't believe that we can have a presidential election in the middle of a giant conflict. That is what they think of you, my friends. Don't ever forget it. Well, we burned through another busy broadcast day on the program. Wide Right Turn with Joey Correnti and Tom Kelly is next. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics.